Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan. To Narayan, we see the supremose human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesha Vajreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavat Utamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishitiki. We're starting from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, entitled Questions by Vidura. We're on text 3. It's December 26, 2021. We're here at Mother Malini's ashram in Alachua, Florida, with Malini and Ananda. And here online, there's, I see, Daru Brahma Prabhu and Kim and Laura and George and Rukmini and Bhaktaniko, Bhaktadevan and Gajendra Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Okay, good to be with you. All right. So text 3 of Canto 3, Chapter 1. Raja Uvacha Kutra Kshatu Bhagavata Matrayena Asa Sangama Kada Va Saha Sambada Etat Varnaya Na Prabho. Okay. Rajovacha Kshutra Kshatur Bhagavata Matrayena Sasangama Kadava Saha Sambada Etad Varnayana Prabhu. Etad Varnayana Prabhu. Rajovacha Kutrakshatur Bhagavata Maitrayena Sasangama Kadava Saha Sambada Kadava Saha Sambada Etad Varnayana Prabhu. Rajovacha Kutrakshatur Bhagavata Maitrayena Sasangama Kadava Saha Sambada Etad Varnayana Prabhu.
Rajovacha Kutrakshatur Bhagavata
Kutrakshatur Bhagavata
Maitrayena Sangamaha
Maitrayena Sasangama
Kadava Saha Sambada
Kadava Saha Sambada
Etad Varnayana Prabhu.
Etad Varnayana Prabhu. Rajovacha Kutrakshatur Bhagavata Maitrayena Sasangama Kadava Saha Sambada Etad Varnayana Prabhu. Would someone online like to recite the verse? This is text 3, chapter 1, canto 3.
Rajo Vacha Kutra Shatur Bhagavata
Shatur Bhagavata
Maitreyan Nasa Sangamaha
Maitre Nasa Sangama
Kadava Saha Sambada
Kadava Saha Sambada
Etad Varnaya Naha Prabhu
Etad Varnayana Prabhu. Okay, we'll go to the word for word. Raja Uvacha. The king said. Kutra. Wherein. Shatu. With Vidura. Bhagavata. And with his grace. Maitreyena. With Maitreya. Asa. There was. Sangama. Meeting. Kada. When. Va. Also. Saha. With. Samvada. Discussion. Etat. This. Varnaya. Describe. Na. Unto me. Prabhu. O my Lord. Translation. The king asked Shukadev Goswami, where and when did the meeting and discussion take place between Saint Vidura and His Grace Maitreya Muni? Kindly oblige, my Lord, and describe this to us. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.E.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Exactly as Shaunaka Rishi inquired of Sutta Goswami, and Sutta Goswami replied, so Srila Shukadev Goswami replied to King Parikshit's inquiries. The king was very anxious to understand the meaningful discussion that took place between the two great souls. Okay, so the purport is short. We could legitimately go to the next text, but though it's short, it is very rich and meaningful. So I'm going to stop there, and so let's discuss this verse in purport. Okay, so just for those who joined in the past few minutes, we're on Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 1, Text 3. Welcome, Casey, Anandini, and Shama Priya. Hare Krishna. Okay, so. Om Mangyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanad Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, Chapter 1, Text 3. Rajovacha Kutrikshatur Bhagavata Maitreyena Sasangama Kadava Saha Samvada Etad Varnayana Prabho. Translation. The king asked Shukadeva Goswami, where and when did the meeting and discussion take place between Saint Vidura and His Grace Maitreya Muni? Kindly oblige, my lord, and describe this to us. And Prabhupada's purport is 2 sentences, so I'll read that again. Exactly as Shaunaka Rishi inquired of Sutta Goswami, and Sutta Goswami replied, so Srila Shukadeva Goswami replied to King Parikshit's inquiries. The king was very anxious to understand the meaningful discussion that took place between the 2 great souls. Okay. All right. So, yes. Maharaj Parikshit is eager to hear about this discussion between Maitreya Muni, and the term Saint Vidura is used here. He's fully confident. He's trusting that this is not some idle chit-chat, gossip, Ramya Katha, like that. It's described, well, just like we're here in the first verses of the 3rd canto. So in the first verses of the 2nd canto, the very first verses of the 2nd canto, Shukadeva Goswami describes Shota Vyadani Rajendra Nuinam Shanti Sahasrasha Apashyatam Matatvam Griheshu Griha Medinam. He's describing that for the most part, people in conditioned material life, they've got thousands of subjects to talk about. They've got thousands of subjects that are gramya katha, that are not meaningful and purposeful in any substantial way. Apashyatam atmatafam, they're devoid of vibrations related to supporting the self to turn towards itself in self-realization, related to self-realization. Griheshu griha medinam. So, yeah. So, okay, so this points that, like to develop a desire that our words mean something. Just put it there, okay? That the words we vibrate and the conversations we have, that they're actually meaningful. I mean, that's kind of like simple, but it could be profound. Okay, that like what I vibrate, the vacho vegam, it's actually meaningful. Okay, and that's like a special opportunity in the human form of life as spiritual beings having human experience. It's described in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto of Bhagavatam. Kamasya nendriya pritir labo jiveta yavata jivasya taka jigyasa nehoyas nartayas jeha karmabi. Thank you. So that human life is meant to, let's take care of the vehicle, take care of the body, both, the physical body and the subtle material body, the mind, the intellect, the emotions, take care of that, while cultivating an inspiration to inquire about that which is metta, an inspiration to inquire about that, which is absolute, which means like that which is true and valid and good in all space and time. Okay, to inquire about that sort of happiness, pleasure, which will never be devastated by time, to develop an inspiration. Right? Now in that verse, it's not saying like, here's the answers, but like it's inquiring us, it's like encouraging us. Atato Brahma Jigyasa Jivasi Tata Jigyasa Natayascha. It's encouraging us. Yeah, like, yeah, develop an enthusiasm to ask such questions. And so Maharaj Parikshit, he knows that this conversation between Vidura and Maitreya is just like all about that. So now so we are on verse 3 of the first chapter. So this conversation between Maitreya and Vidura is going to go for 64 chapters. And as we've discussed, at the rate we're going, it's 20 to 25 years. In our personal reading, we can accelerate quicker than that. But yeah, so we've been doing about 3 chapters per year since we started these programs in December 2010. So 64 chapters. So those chapters are all about discussions around the absolute truth. So we say, oh, okay. Now, actually, so if we look at the content of where we're going to go in these 64 chapters, it's all there. You say, okay, so it's some like sort of like 64 chapters of abstract, dry philosophy. We got coming up, we got physics and chemistry, calculation of time from the atom. We've got what, would typically be described as just as like juicy, romantic, even sexual adventures coming up, right? Coming up soon. Yeah. Stay tuned. Don't switch the channel. We got the whole Kardamamuni and Devahuti pastimes, and then we got politics coming up. We got economics. We got political intrigue. Okay, so you say, well, I thought it's all about like meaningful philosophy. Genealogy. Yeah, right. Okay, we got lots of genealogy coming up. Like, so this one's the cousin of this one, who's the granduncle. What? Okay, so okay, well, so how's that relate to me? So of course it relates. I was just hearing a lecture from Prabhupada, and he was talking. It was lecturing the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and he said, yeah, and Prabhupada was saying, yeah, someone asked me, it's like, so devotees are devoting themselves to transcendence. So they're not involved in politics. And Prabhupada responded, he goes, no, why not? Why a devotee should not be involved in politics? Why not? Okay, so it is, so, okay, so, so this process, this philosophy, it's completely world embracing. It's not world rejecting. Okay. And this, of course, this is all energy of source. It's completely world that there's it's world embracing. It's not about rejecting. It is about, it's not about elimination. It's about transformation. Transforming our natural propensities for economics and politics and romance and adventure and physics and chemistry and social work. There's a verse. Narada Muni in the first canto, he speaks to his student Vyasadeva. Idam hi pumsas tapasa shutasya suktasya sviktasya chabudi dati vichu turta kavibir nirupito yad uttamashloka gunanu varnanam. And in the verse in purport, Narada Muni and Prabhupada, they specifically mention psychology, social work, social services, chemistry, physics, politics, economics, all of these natural human endeavors, not to be rejected in approaches to spiritual life, rather used to support us to cultivate that soul felt inquiry into that which is meaningful. I'll just quickly read the translation to the next text. Saint Vidura was a great and pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his questions to his grace Rishi Maitreya must have been very purposeful on the highest level and proved by learned circles. So, okay, so we just gave a synopsis of the next 64 chapters, and it goes just all over. All fields of human endeavor are there. All right. And so anasaktasya vishanyatami yunjata yabanda Krishna samade yuktam vairagyam uchyate. That yeah, so like we're encouraged to cultivate the art, the science, right? Integrate all these natural fields of human endeavor in the sincere search to deepening our realization of truth. Okay, so when I say all these subjects are talking about, so Vidura and Maitreya and Shukadeva Goswami Maharaj, they're not indulging in like a Harlequin romance or political topics, not or in science. They're not indulging in it just for the sake of it. Neither is it spiritual bypass, like, oh well, we're spiritual, so we're not going to talk about these so-called material subjects. No, relating to all these energies in a way that enhances our enthusiasm for self-realization, for self-discovery. And yeah, so this is this is we have our institute, Sattva Tov. So sattva, a way to understand sattva, a way to understand the essential meaning of sattva is that sattva is the mode, it's the consciousness, that which brings to conscious awareness that was till now not perceived, that which brings to conscious awareness that which till now was not perceived. And so that's what we're endeavoring to do. And with all of our programs like that, to whether it's, oh yeah, okay, I can see what this depression has really been about. Okay, that's sattva. I can see, like, I've been denying how envious I am of him, and just pretending I'm, really like this friend, but like I really have this envy going on. And I may say the envy or the shame, the jealousy, the depression. Well, that's not sattvic. The awareness of it is sattvic, to bring to awareness that which till now was not perceived. So this is another way to understand sattva is expanding the openness, expanding the range of awareness, expanding the range of possibilities. To the extent that I'm associating with sattva rather than, let's say, rajas or tamas, I'm more capable to connect with anger. I'm not controlled by my anger, neither am I controlled by fear of anger. I'm more capable to connect with humor and detachment rather than just being pulled into the same festival of misery relationship dynamics that get me always entangled. Some sattva, I get to respond differently than I've done till now if I choose. That's sattva. So this, well, I mentioned openness. And something I like to speak of, because I think it relates to a way that this Bhagavatam kind of includes and transcends a lot of what goes on in the name of openness. Okay, like includes and transcends, which is important. It's important. So that openness, open-mindedness is a virtue. It's a virtue. It's a virtue, and it's certainly a quality of those, to the extent that we're really alive in genuine spiritual life and self-realization and discovery, we're going to enhance our open-mindedness. To the extent that I'm in like lower modes, then it's feeling like, well, if I'm open-minded, then my status quo, my masks might be revealed. So then, so open mind, it's a virtue, and it's intrinsically a quality of the soul. And then what sort of happened in, you know, some circles is that this kind of like openness, open-mindedness, it becomes like the implicit understanding is that it's that it becomes practically a virtue unto itself. Whereas what we have here, like if we look at examples like Arjuna, Maharaj Parikshit, Sanatan Goswami approaches Lord Chaitanya, Ke Ami, Kaniyamaya Jari Tapatraya. He says, like, yeah, people, because he had it all together materially, right? He was very wealthy and like practically the prime minister of the state, and very intelligent, attractive, approaches Lord Chaitanya. He goes, people think I'm great. And he goes, and I'm such a fool. I believe them. And he goes, but actually, I don't even know who I am. And I do know. I'm suffering like anything. And I don't know why. And I want to know why. And so he's open. Arjuna, Shishasteham Sadimam Tram Prapanam. Saying, okay, I have enough humility. Then yeah, I'm suffering here, even though I'm the alpha warrior of the age, but like I'm in this predicament. This is agony. So please, so I'm open to you. So that openness, I'll call openness, is meant to be, this is my stance. It's meant to be an ongoing, eternal, instrumental virtue to actually move us to arrive at what is objectively true, good, and beautiful. Right. So right. So because sometimes like if you've arrived at any sort of like principles that you think are objective or true, that means you're closed-minded. Okay, so that's nonsense. Just like let's say whatever. So let's say if in third grade I was open, right, when I was 7 years old, I was open to hear from Mrs. Gerbarg. And Mrs. Gerbarg revealed to me 8 times 5 is 40. So now I stand strong. I stand strong in that open, absolute truth. I stand strong. 8 times 5 is 40. So you can say, you're closed-minded. I'm not closed-minded. I'm very open-minded. I'm liberal, open-minded, accommodating. In fact, if you want to present evidence that 8 times 5 is 41, I'm actually open to hear. And in the meantime, I stand strong conviction that the objective truth I heard from Mrs. Gerbarg, which is consistent with all logic and rationality, is objectively true. Okay, so standing strong on true principles is not contradictory to being open-minded and liberal. Just to establish, it's kind of obvious, but it's like kind of gets muddled in, in some circles. When I was, some of you have heard me quote this. This was a valedictorian at Harvard, maybe back in the 80s somewhere. I read this in a book by Bela. I think the book's called The Great Society. Great book, actually. So, but he quotes a valedictorian at Harvard, and the valedictorian starts his speech by saying, ladies and gentlemen, there is one quality, one experience that all of us graduates have experienced at this fine institution of higher learning. And ladies and gentlemen, that experience is confusion. Somehow they didn't get the big cane and take him off the stage at that point. They let him, and then he went on and goes, confusion. And he said, the freedom of our day is the freedom to devote ourselves to any values we choose, on the mere condition that we don't believe them to be true. So he was basically, he's saying, like, we've been educated to be insane, essentially. Now be open, anything you choose. But if you actually think that you're choosing a values or set of values, morals like that are objectively true, oh, then you're some sort of primitive. Then you're ostracized. That's rejected, like that. Okay, so it's a, you know.
It's no absolute position.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No absolute position. Are you sure that's the correct position? No absolute position? Oh yeah. Are you absolutely sure? And then the whole thing unravels, of course. So, okay, yeah, so encourage openness to connect with our chit potency, that natural energy of the living force to go towards truth, to in an open way, to deepen our realization, of that which is objectively true, good, and beautiful. And so, yeah, and in doing that, you know, we Om Purnam Araha Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachite Purnasya Purnamade Purnameva Vishishate, then we appreciate that the world, the relationships, including the really irritating parts of them, and dealing with sexual energy and financial energy and pandemics and health stuff and our own mind, and that, oh, okay, I get it. So like Tatenu Kampam Susunikshamano Bunjana Eva Makritam Vipakam Vidvagva Purvya Vidadanamaste Jivete Mukti Pade Sadayaba. That this is all, like, we're encouraged by the Bhagavatam to develop the consciousness that this is all a perfect and complete arrangement in its apparent, you know, defectiveness and gross imperfection. It's all a perfect and complete arrangement to support me to go deeper into my enthusiasm for self-realization, for truth. Again, the whole Vedas begin, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Atato means now. Now, what does that mean? Now that I'm in the human form of life, now's the time to inquire. Now's the time to inquire about meaningful subjects that can kind of free me from just being a machine of my karma. I get to, because in one sense, everything's deterministic to the extent, to the extent that that we're just resigning ourselves to be part of this machine, Yantrudani Maya, this machine made of material energy. So wherever we're stuck on the machine, then like it's all destiny and fate. And particularly in the human form. Actually, we were reading this morning, right before Japa, Lord Chaitanya, he would bring the tigers and the deer and the lions and the squirrels. He was bringing all living entities to sattva and transcendence, And Prabhupada emphasizes, like, well, we don't want to imitate that. At the same time, we can serve other human beings to kind of, you know, join in the movement of waking up, Jeev Jago, join in the movement of waking up. And so that, you know, this is perfect and complete arrangement for me to to wake up and deepen my enthusiasm for Vidyavadu Jivanam, for immersing myself in the life of all transcendental knowledge, in knowledge that is not, when we're talking about knowledge here, we're not talking about information or data, but Divyagan Vidi Prokashito, knowledge that is transforming the heart, and not knowledge like, you know, who won the Super Bowl in 1971, which I could tell you, but I'm not going to go there. Or how many windows are in this Empire State Building, and that sort of thing. So that all these subjects of human endeavor. So this is about meeting ourselves where we're at, like in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita describes about different levels of consciousness, anamoya, like primarily motivated by food. Okay, pranamoya, okay, concerns around life, paying the rent, how I make enough to pay the bills, you know, like that. So these Maitreya Muni Vidura, it's about like compassionately meeting us where we're at and gently encouraging us to deepen our enthusiasm for Jivasya Tattva Jigyasa, for inquiring about that transformational knowledge, that quality of happiness that'll never be crushed by time. Bayam Dvitiya Biniveshatasya, because to the extent that we're seeking happiness, fulfillment, bliss, satisfaction, peace, security, in anything temporary, we're going to be in anxiety, because we know at some level, you know, even if I get it, it's going to be crushed. It's going to be destroyed. So yeah, there's, in our Bhagavad Gita group, we're studying chapter 15. In the beginning of chapter 15, Krishna starts with the banyan tree analogy. So Krishna describes a banyan tree with its roots up and its branches down. So what? No, the roots are down, branches are, where do we see a tree with branches down and roots up? So then it's described if we're standing on the bank of a river. So then the reflected tree on the water. Yeah, the branches down and the roots up. Okay. And then actually that tree represents material approaches to spirituality and religion. And so we can just enter into that analogy a bit. We can think like, sometimes the reflection exists, sometimes not. But the actual banyan tree is always there. And this is important. Because like, again, let's say we try to get some fruit from the reflected tree. There's nothing substantial. So we can say, yes. So it's all insubstantial. There's nothing real. That's wrong. So in the purport, Prabhupada gives the brilliant purport. He goes like, he talks about those whose realization of the absolute stops with the impersonal. Because there's realization, good, true realization. Yeah, material, attempts at material fulfillment through the material energy, that's all illusory. It's all illusory, because these are just temporary forms based on illusion that I am this body, I'm David Wolf, I'm 61 years old. That's all illusion. There's no reality. Wrong. Yeah, that's illusion. But there is a real banyan tree. And this is like a special gift, matchless gift, a special gift that we get from Srila Prabhupada through Srimad Bhagavatam. That, yeah, let's reject the illusion, just like a similar analogy. Describe that there could be a mirage of an oasis in the desert, in the spring, in the lake, and an animal, maybe a human, but say an animal thirsty animal goes, oh, it's just 50 yards and that, and it runs after the mirage of the oasis. Oh, and it's just 50 yards that way now. And then the animal keeps running till the animal dies. So metaphorically, so this is like desert life that's separated from the self, turning towards itself and self-realization in an open-minded spirit of discovery. Because there's no water. But that's not true. There's no water in the mirage, but water does exist. There's just no water in the illusion, in the reflected banyan tree, in the mirage.
That's why the animal are looking for.
Yeah,
It
it exists. Yeah, it does exist. It does exist. So then, so it is, let's say, a spiritual achievement to realize, to some extent, there's no water in the mirage, in the desert of material life. I heard a comedian say once, yeah, trying to be satisfied by material acquisition is like trying to satisfy one's hunger by taping sandwiches all over your body. Okay, sorry to put that image in your mind, but I did it, so there. Okay, so yeah, so this is like, it's just like you can tape another 10 sandwiches, it's just not going to do it. So Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada, I just read a transcribed lecture from Prabhupada yesterday, and Prabhupada, he kept saying, he said, I'm just a peon. A peon is like the lowest level, like a peasant, like a pawn, like in chess, a pawn. I'm just a peon, and I'm just wanting to share this knowledge on behalf of my spiritual master. So that's potency. I mean, like, there's no tinge of material ego in the way, no tinge of my own. I'll be known as the most compassionate Gaudiya Vaishnava. He just wants to share the knowledge. Okay, and so this Divyagan Vide Prokashito, so we're grateful. It's impossible to be grateful enough that we're hearing from a pure source, Srila Prabhupada. And then we get to do our best to be a pure via medium to represent Prabhupada. So there is water. So there is water there, and there are fulfilling relationships for the soul, and fulfilling dancing and eating and fulfilling politics and economics. And that all exists in the real banyan tree. And that's what we get in Bhagavad Gita gives us a glimpse, and Bhagavatam more fully. And then Chaitanya Charitamrita is about like the fruits of that. So, yeah. So Maharaj Parikshit inquiring from Shukadev Goswami about this conversation that's coming up between Maitreya Muni and Saint Vidura, and so much just knowing that this is the real stuff. This is the real nectar. It's not like abstract spiritual bypass, which just comes from ignorant fear, facing what's really happening. It's diving into all of it with intention to deepen our realization of that which is objectively true, good, that happiness that will never be crushed by time, true beauty. And again, in closing, just this verse, okay, because we talked about that which is true. Yeah, I want my words to matter. I want my conversations to matter. So the opposite of that is prajalpa, right? Rupa Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami, he describes in his Nectar of Instruction certain quality states of being that are helpful to cultivate sattvic and truly transcendental consciousness, and states of being that are unhelpful. So in the unhelpful, he has prajalpa, atihara prayashascha prajapo niyamagraha. Prajalpa is like the thousands of topics, Shotavyadani, Rajendra, yeah, that which just alienates us further. It alienates us further from turning towards ourselves, honestly. Yeah. And there's certain, so it's like, so we get to choose, we get to choose self-realization, sattvic, transcendental consciousness at any moment, right? There's no excuses. Savai pum sam puro dharma yato bhakti at hokshaje. I took you pratiyataya yatma suprasidoti. Right? Spirit is superior to matter. At the same time, there are different habits, different practices we can cultivate that support us to choose openness and freedom and to choose conscious living. And that's, Krishna calls them the regulative principles of freedom. Like if we're like grossly eating the results of gross violence involving an animal dying in screaming agony, it's not going to support an inner sattvic consciousness. Obvious stuff. We're already struggling in layers of illusion. So I know to come out of illusion, I'll smoke a joint. Or like that. So it's just recommend, like, if it's not even about good, bad, right, wrong, moral, immoral. Just if we want to develop this consciousness of steadily enhancing our enthusiasm for clarity and to come out of self-deception, there's certain principles, certain habits that are helpful. I mentioned about vegetarianism. I've shared with some of you. This was in it was in 1998 when I was in Hillsborough, North Carolina, of all places. And I was leaving, and because I conducted some child protection stuff there. And I had like a few hours before my plane left. So I went whatever university, I went to some university, whatever, maybe University of North Carolina, lots of universities, right? And I just went to the university library and I just had some inspiration on this. And so I did a database search, and it was old-fashioned cards and some computer stuff. And I because like social work, and that was the time I was completing my PhD in social work. And social work, that's like the profession of all professions. That's kind of advocating against sectarian isms, sexism and racism, like that. So I did a search for social work and speciesism, and I found nothing. So I found that interesting. And so I wrote an article about it. It was actually published in the January 2000 issue of the journal Social Work. And I started the article by writing about the mother of modern social work, Jane Addams. And so her story is, she was an affluent American, like in Chicago, that didn't have to work for a living. And she was on vacation. In Spain with some friends. She was a young woman. And they went to the bullfights. And she saw what they did to the bulls and how gruesome and gory it was. And that changed her life. And that moved her, rather than just living a decadent life of luxury that had no meaning. Then she started Whole House in Chicago, and she's the mother of modern social work. And it started with her compassion for the suffering of animals. So I asked in the article rhetorically, maybe Jane Addams got it wrong. Maybe she got it wrong because, as professional social workers, there's no reason to have such compassion. It maybe, and then I went through different arguments about animals having a soul, and those who abuse animals as a child have a much higher rate of becoming murderers and rapists and things like that. So this was so just she realized, like, oh yeah, how we treat animals, that's going to affect how open we are to be sensitive and empathic to other human beings, like that. So certain regular principles around choices, around sexuality, around food, that support us to more and more want that our conversations, our words will be meaningful and to not waste our time. So this text 3 of chapter 1 of Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam reads, Rajo Vacha Kshutra Kshatur Bhagavata Matrena Sasangama Kadava Saha Sambada Etad Varnayana Prabhu. The king asked Shukadev Goswami, where and when did the meeting and discussion take place between Saint Vidura and His Grace Maitreya Muni? Kindly oblige, my lord, and describe this to us. Thank you for your presence and association. I welcome at this time any comments, realizations, or questions. Ananta?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to taking no absolute position.
Yeah.
And the idea of, I think that one of the most attractive aspects of Krishna consciousness that also can be the most limiting is that we have access to so much knowledge, and we can be the knower and the one who knows.
Yeah.
And then that feeds our ego and we're like, I know.
Yeah.
And then I become blind, or we become blind to subtleties and nuances because we think we already know.
Yeah.
And then we fight about knowing, and then it's like the Society for Mental Platforming instead of, the Society for Krishna Consciousness.
Yeah, to cultivate consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so I've been really living in this question for the last few years around what it means to, like, letting go of being the knower. Like, I'm very satisfied with the knowledge I have, and I'm always seeking more.
Yeah.
And I hope I never stop. But there's this like parallel track that I'm holding right now, where I'm like daily, like emptying the bucket, like I don't really know anything.
Yeah. Start from I don't know. Start from a real spirit of discovery, emptying the bucket. Society for Mental Platform. I like it.
Yeah. So right. So yeah. And so like I'd like really just like, when you go on the altar, you have to drop your identity. Like I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm just a servant. So please just like, living in the, what's it called? I was just listening to this chiropractor who's talking about something about living in, it's not just like living in the unknown, like really dropping stuff so that you can live in that, I guess some people call it 0 point field, where you really have access to what Krishna wants and what's possible. So I'm trying to do that. And so I'm thinking about that in terms of taking a position, like, like how, like where academia is at right now, and it's probably going to change, but for now, there's still this like mood of like, no, everything is relative, and we're learning how to take different perspectives and then absolutizing that, because it's like a container, they're putting a circle around taking different perspectives. And I'm just trying to like, I'm curious now how that fits within the framework of, well, we actually do know, but we don't know, but we know, but we do have a position, and there's all of these perspectives. And I just wanted to know if you wanted to comment on that whole mess right there, like how that fits together, like bringing the transcendent include piece in, the inclusive piece of knowing but not knowing. Yeah.
Thank you, Nanda. I appreciate your comments, sharing, questions, sharing your experience. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. And what you share, I want to say, like, for me, personally, what you share, it relates a lot to my personal process over the decades. I would say I have, some significant jnani type tendency, and I would say a propensity towards the anartha of I'm superior to you because I know and you don't. I know more than you. So, and so I like to think I progressed over the years and decades, but I could, because I think, like, okay, that in sharing these principles and in sharing my realizations and understanding, I think, because I can think of times, let's call it in the early years, like in Israel and like that, where I would share in such a way and people would, like, clearly be repulsed because they would just see just like the ego of this guy. Okay. And I was like, but I'm right. And I know. And I wouldn't say that, but like, and I'd like to think that's less there now. I hope so. Like, so it relates to my personal process. It relates to my personal process. Okay, and then two other principles coming to mind related to what you express. So one is like this. So we're really, like, if we're really encouraging Atato Brahma Jigyasa, now's the time to inquire, right? So someone, starting with ourselves, that if we're like, we just move, and because, like, okay, so the Vedas, we start with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, which essentially offering obeisances to the substratum of all existence, which is not nothing. It's not the undifferentiated oneness. It's not matter. It's transcendental personhood. Okay, but now, okay, but let's say someone's not accepting that, they're not realizing that, they object to it. Okay, but if through our association that someone, including ourselves, is coming to a more childlike spirit of, yeah, I want to inquire about these things. What is the ground of all existence? I think it makes sense that it's nothing, kind of like the Buddhists assert. Okay, that's exciting that someone's, again, starting with ourselves, that just someone's coming to ask the questions, then that is, they're on the Vedic path. That's Atato Brahma. They're on the Vedic path, just by asking the question. So that's to be celebrated, honored, respected. Now, yeah. So just to be in the question, that's wonderful. And let's honor that. No, the important thing is that you're not agreeing with me. No, the important thing that we're in the question. Now, at the same time, we're not saying, because there are no answers. No, that's not true. We gave, so that's where I think I touched on it in the class, the integration, because the nature of the soul is to be open, childlike spirit of discovery. And the spirit of soul is chit potency, to be alive in realized knowledge, not a jnani type, like trying to control the world and other people in the universe because I have these factoids. The nature of the soul is to be alive in realized knowledge, and simultaneously in the spirit of discovery. So I see that as a vital integration of these tattvas, of these truths. I gave the Mrs. Gerbarg example. So, okay, so 3 + 3 is 6. Okay, so that's realized knowledge in the field of math. Okay. Now, hopefully I won't use that to, like, if I'm there with the kindergartners, to try to shame them, like, you don't even know that 3 + 3 is, like, I'm not going to use this as like a metaphor, right? So similarly, like, so the soul is full of realized knowledge by nature, and to some extent our diamond is covered by the modes, so we're not connected with that realized. We forgot that we're radiant, vibrant beings full of realized knowledge. So yeah, so to be alive to that which is objective, good, and true, and simultaneously in that spirit of discovery and the integration of those qualities, I'll call it, on the platform of the self alive to itself. There's not a contradiction.
Okay. Can I do a quick follow-up?
Yeah.
So the follow-up is what about realized knowledge that doesn't come from books? So right now I have a mentor, not like, I wouldn't call him a guru, I'd call him a spiritual mentor, who's helping me to kind of let go of my concepts about Krishna and kind of surrender to a higher consciousness where I can really be an instrument for Krishna. And it's I guess the way I did it in ISKCON was, I learned these rules, I follow these rules, I listen to this book, and then I control the body and mind and we move. But this is more like this, like, kind of deeper core surrender.
Okay. Yeah.
So in that, I experienced the personality of Godhead very clearly.
Okay.
It's probably it's more than super soul, but I'm trying to articulate the question in the moment. I'm sorry. So in that, there's a letting. It's like I kind of think about Radha and Krishna Leela, because it's like you kind of have to, like, you work so hard to be like good and pious and right, and then at some point you have to kind of be willing to let go of that identification to actually surrender and actually be an instrument. And I was just reading, I think it was the purport after this, where Krishna, or maybe it was a purport before, where Krishna said that whatever he enjoys is also him. And so Vrindavan is him, and the house of the Pandavas is also him, and not non-different from Vrindavan because he's with his friend. So there is that sense of being spiritualized by being able to be an instrument in some real way, in some moment. Without all of these security blankets around. Anyway, so so back to the question. So their perspective is that they're not holding any position about who Krishna is or what Krishna is. They just want to be an instrument for what Krishna wants by, like, totally letting go and entering into that flow. And that's their position. I guess I have a question, but I'm not able to articulate it. So maybe I'll just stop there. Maybe I'll just let it evolve as I spend a couple days with you guys. I'll just drop it, I think. You're smiling.
Thank you, Nanda. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, share a comment. I don't know when to hear Mother Malini's comment. Okay. Yeah, so, okay. So yeah, so you as the expert in your life, get to determine, like, is whoever you're hearing from, the realizations you're having, yeah, is that working? Like, it's about intelligence means to make distinctions. Is this Krishna, higher guidance? Is this my tricky material ego? So related to what you're sharing, I mean, for me personally, look, because, like, okay, we read this book this morning called Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's not a book in the ordinary sense. This is
Seminars.
what's that?
Seminars.
Seminars.
That's how I present the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. So this is like it's like realized knowledge coming from conversations between Maharaj Parikshit, Shukadeva Goswami, Vidura, and Maitreya, but from Srila Prabhupada. It's Bhagavatam is basically about conversations and the realizations. Okay, and we can all have our stance about that. Well, I think it's just like a book, or so I've also read many books that are not like considered Gaudiya Vaishnava and like that. So it's not, and I get realizations from so many places, and then it's so what's important for me is like to notice my experience, what I'm hearing from. Actually, yesterday I distracted me for 45 minutes, and I somehow, because it was like Christmas spirit, so I landed on, it was a debate between a rabbi and a Christian scholar in Houston about the Old Testament references to Jesus, and they were getting into it. It was at a Baptist church, and so I go, wow, that's realization. So I go so many places, and that's fun, and maybe it's spiritual, maybe it's Gyani, whatever it is. So that's why for me, this principle, we use this term a lot. Prabhupada uses the term current link. So I've developed experientially a trust in my current link to Krishna's disciplic succession. That's A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So whatever I get, like I want to check it out with Prabhupada. And it's not like books. Yeah, sure, it might be books. It could be hearing a lecture. It could be like the totality of reading like hundreds of thousands of pages of Prabhupada, hearing his lectures. So checking out with Prabhupada, that supports me to know, as far as what I'm experiencing inside, heart, gut, mind, whatever. Yeah, to what extent is this Krishna or is this Maya? To what extent is this going to support me in my ongoing joyful process of self-realization? To what extent is this like seems nice, but this is kind of like a detour? So that's why, like yeah, I mean, I'm happy to say I have implicit trust in Srila Prabhupada as kind of like a reference point for myself.
Yeah. I see that in you, that you have this deep love for Srila Prabhupada. It's your love for him and your appreciation of him that creates this. I don't know, it seems to flow both ways, but I just, when I think about you and I saw you doing puja Prabhupada today, I just was feeling this deep devotion to Prabhupada, of his qualities, of his nature, of his wisdom, and a deep dedication to him as his son. It's finding, I see that in you.
Thanks for sharing. Deep love, let's say I aspire for deep love, but I'd be overreaching to say that I'm experiencing that. And yeah, I've come, definitely each year of my life, I've come to trust Prabhupada just more and more. And that's whether I'm on the path Prabhupada gave or not, my trust for him always increases. Because when I'm not on the path that Prabhupada gave, and of course, when I say Prabhupada, he's representing Bhagavatam. When I'm not on the path, I have experiences that confirm, yeah, that's just what would be predicted. And so, yeah, and I have an implicit faith in Srila Prabhupada. And there's like, so you mentioned that this, whoever you're hearing from, like they mentioned Krishna. So I have no doubt Prabhupada Prabhupada only wants to serve Krishna. He's got nothing else going on. He's got he knows Krishna and he knows how to serve Krishna. He knows how to engage me in service to Krishna. And that is a source of security and joy. And so, again, to the extent that I connect with it, I spend much of most days alienating myself from such as my, kind of foolishness. But yeah. So I have lots of experience, and I go to different places that aren't Gaudiya Vaishnava, and I check things out with Prabhupada.
No, I didn't want that.
Oh.
I was speaking to John.
Oh, to turn to me, Krishna. Okay.
Yeah, you were smiling.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's good. I wasn't conscious.
But I have some comment question.
Sure, Molly.
Need to be seen. Yeah, I really appreciate when you spoke about, like, I know at least in my family there is a lot of, we don't speak about that, and many families are like that.
Yeah.
How many circles there is taboos topics,
Uh-huh.
and I really appreciated how you brought the point, and that's a true point, that in spiritual consciousness and in meaningful conversation, those go well.
True.
There is absolutely no topics that are off.
Taboo. There's nothing that's
There's
taboo.
no taboos. There's no like, we cannot speak about that.
Yeah.
From the perspective of spiritual consciousness. Correct. And meaningful conversation. And I really appreciate the way you brought that that point. That like, we're not supposed to speak about that. Yes, let's, like, we speak about violence, and we speak about sex, and we speak about politics, and we speak about, there's no limitation, in fact, to our kata. Yeah. Because everything is related to Krishna. So I appreciated that. And then you spoke about Gramya Kata, and I have a very interesting experience because I put so much Krishna in my mind. Like I know the sponge effect, that whatever I put in my mind give it back to me. Mm-hmm. And so I put so much Krishna in my mind, but then now my mind regurgitates things that are so Gramya Kata, like things I don't want to hear, I don't want to speak about, that's not interesting. And I'm puzzled by that. Like, even like, let's say I go shopping for shoes. Yeah. Then my mind is thinking about shoes, and I don't need to think about shoes. At least when I was engaged in so many other things, I could think about those things and feel good about myself. But now it's So I was noticing the Gramya Kata. I don't care. I really don't care. It doesn't interest me. The sponge I want principle. Meaningful conversation. And if I use my mind, if I'm consciously thinking, then those, like those meaningful conversation do come. Yeah. But when my mind is idle, let's say I do like chanting, or like when I'm not engaging my mind necessarily, that's when it's real practical.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, the sponge principle. So.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising. You can tell me.
Please don't turn it back. But I'm just thinking about that distinction when you talk about Gramya Kata versus Krishna Kata. Like, anything can be Krishna consciousness, but Krishna conscious, but that doesn't mean that like it is. so like learning how to talk about politics, like devotees may talk about politics but not be Krishna conscious, and devotees may be talking about all kinds of things amongst themselves and we may be thinking we're Krishna conscious when really we're not, you know what I mean? And so I'm just starting to kind of wake up to like what really is spiritually enlivening and what is just like,
There's one more thing I wanted to share about conversation. Is like, we spoke about the conversation between Sukadeva Goswami Maharaj Parikshit,
Yeah.
Maharaj Parikshit is asking about Maitreya and Vidua and the eagerness of that. And recently, when I go in my car, there's all the 1968, everything that Prabhupada said in 1968.
Yeah.
It's just 1968. And then in the past, when conversation will come between two people, I will like, yeah, I prefer class.
Yeah.
And I will prefer class.
Yeah.
But lately I've seen like I'm really eager.
Yeah.
I'm really eager because of that, because whoever is asking question, whoever is discussing with Srila Prabhupada, whatever topic it is,
Yeah.
his perspective are so refreshing and,
Yeah.
and so enlivening.
Right.
And I do want to develop the same eagerness that Maharaj Parikshit is showing here. Like, I want to hear about Maitreya speaking with Vidura. Well, I want to hear about Srila Prabhupada speaking with that, news reporter, whatever, wherever.
Yeah.
Even so, there are news reporters.
Yeah, because his responses, he's just are so Krishna conscious to wherever the speaker is, and it's so illuminating and instructive.
And out of the box.
Out of the
It's
box,
always out of the box.
consistently out of the box. Yeah.
Consistently out of the box. So it's just like, yeah, and I consciously wanted that eagerness to develop, of wanted to have like, oh wow, I wish I was in conversation when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was speaking with his son, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. What did he say? And like that. It's just bring it to our, to my level, and where can we seek to hear conversation that great sages, that great Mahatmas have together.
Thanks for that sharing, Melanie. I'm reminded in this discussion, there's a purport. I think it's the 6th canto of Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada, because often we hear like, Prabhu, that's Maya. Oh, you went to that movie? Oh, that's Maya. Oh, that's Maya. So there's a purport, and Prabhupada says, one who sees everything as Maya instead of seeing that everything is Krishna is an offender. Right? Says so. Yeah. So whether that book, that movie, that video, it's not Maya. Everything is Krishna. Yeah, of course, the example we often give. So what is the vodka in the vodka bottle? What's that?
Just my mind is Maya.
Yeah, right. So okay, so that means that the vodka in the vodka bottle, that's Krishna, it's not Maya. So if I drink the vodka, then I'll be more Krishna conscious. That's not necessarily the logical conclusion. So it's true, and that's what Prabhupada's saying. Everything is Krishna. Don't be narrow-minded. Not everything's Maya. Now, okay, then the next principle, and the related principle is, now how realized am I to realize Krishna everywhere? Yeah, and that's where the capacity to make fine distinctions. So yeah, maybe this movie, maybe this video, maybe the vodka. Okay, now how can I relate to all these energies? This person, this family situation. How can I relate to these situations to support me and everyone involved to enhance our realization of God everywhere? Because there are different ways we can relate to different energies that actually dull my consciousness and interfere with my capacity to realize God everywhere. True, everything is God, God's energy. There's a place in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada in a purport says, your grandmother is God. Okay, so there, yeah, so your grandmother is Krishna, your grandfather is Krishna. Okay, so let's take a picture of our grandmother, put on the altar next to the Goswamis. Okay, so then, yeah, so this process is about in one sense, that it's required pretty much for everyone to make a whole lot of fine, intelligent distinctions to come to the point where we no longer need to make distinctions, where it's just natural to relate to everything in a way that enhances the Krishna consciousness of everyone.
Consciousness and Krishna consciousness.
Consciousness and Krishna conscious. We are conscious and we are consciousness. Thank you everyone for your presence and association. Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.